Maggie Haberman is with us now to discuss. She is a CNN political analyst and Washington correspondent for the New York Times. And Maggie, you have covered Trump for years, so I wonder, how do you think he's viewing this?
I don't think happily, Brianna. I think that Trump has been very, very frustrated and very concerned about these investigations for several months, even before he left the White House. But I think that those concerns have escalated in the last few months. I think, I'm aware that Trump has been spending a lot of time at Trump Tower over the last couple of weeks since he left Palm Beach and returned ostensibly to his club at Bedminster, New Jersey. But where he has been spending a lot of time instead is Trump Tower. And there have been lots of meetings related to these investigations. Now, we know that Trump has a specific playbook he relies on, which is that he claims that everything is a witch hunt and everything is political, and he has been doing this for years, even before he got to the White House, certainly did it a lot in the White House. I think you are going to hear more of that in the coming days, but people close to him all say he is anxious about this.
So how would this affect his influence in the party or a potential run for him even in 2024?
I think it is going to increase the likelihood that at minimum, Brianna, he's going to talk about running. Whether he is going to actually run, I think, is still an open question, whether he will be able to. He has said conflicting things to people around him about that, but he issued a lengthy statement yesterday. It's the second one that he has issued related to the Vance investigation in the last few weeks. And one of the things that he said was, it can't, I'm paraphrasing, but it can't be a coincidence that there's a new poll showing that I'm leading, the Republican primary for 2024, and then he claimed, I think falsely, to be leading the general election, although I have not seen that data. But, that's what he's going to claim, is that these people are going after him, investigators are going after him because he is still in the political limelight. And again, he is always running, right? He has been running for 6 years, and so when you are always running, you're going to claim that everything that's coming against you is political, but I do think you are going to hear him escalate his political behavior, in part because of this investigation.
How does this affect the business and also the rest of the family?
It's a really good question, and I think in terms of the business, look, it certainly does not help their brand, and I think that's one of the things that the former president is frustrated by, to have the specter of this investigation and other investigations hovering over it. I think, he has talked repeatedly, and he said it when he was in office, he has said it since, that his business took a hit when he was in office, so I think this is unhelpful to them. In terms of the family, look, his sons had been running the company while he was president. He is now back. He is more involved. I think that the entire Trump family is concerned about these investigations and what it could mean, which is not to say, by the way, that we have a sense of what the investigations actually mean legally for his family, but certainly it is of concern because they are all involved in this enterprise.
Politico, and I know you've seen this reporting, is saying that Trump is teaming up with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich to try to win back House seats in the midterms. What do you think that they've been cooking up?
So, Brianna, Newt Gingrich and Lindsey Graham in particular, have been trying to get Trump to focus on something policy-related, some kind of, something along the lines of the Contract with America, which is what Newt Gingrich did in the 1990s, something that essentially Republican voters can point to and look at as a map for 2022. And part of why they're focused on that is because they want to try to get Trump to stop focusing on the 2020 election. Half the statements that Trump issues still in the last few days have been about his false claims that the election was stolen from him, or on these controversial, audits that are not showing what he claims they're showing, and so forth. And so I think this is an effort to try to move him past that, because it will help other Republicans in the midterms in 2022. Whether they will be successful, I think, is a real open question. Graham, in particular, has tried many different times to focus Trump's energy on policy, on something other than himself, and on his sense of grievance, and he has been, met with mixed success at best. We'll see how this one works.
Yeah, look forward, not backward. Looking forward may satisfy Donald Trump emotionally, but it's certainly very bad for his party. Maggie, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks for being on.
You too.
All right, joining me now, New York Law School professor and former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Roiphe. Professor, your quoted in the Washington Post is saying the fact of this special grand jury tells you think the prosecution thinks they have a case. Why?
Well, as Ellie told you just a bit earlier, the standard of proof in the grand jury is quite cause, and people joke about that anybody, but prosecutors have a higher obligation. They have an ethical obligation to make sure that they're doing justice. And one of the things that means is you don't get to that phase unless you really believe you have a case. And especially in Cy Vance's office, Cy Vance has come out and said, we don't prosecute cases unless we think we have sufficient evidence to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. So even though the standard of proof is low, the prosecutors themselves, I'm inferring, must have a sense that they've got a case against someone. And I should emphasize that we don't know who, but against someone.
The against someone part is key, and I hope people pick this up here. Daniel Goldman, who we're going to have on later in the show, pointed out, it's hard to make this kind of a tax case against an individual like Donald Trump, who doesn't use email, who could say, look, my lawyers told me this was all okay. So it could be a case against the organization? Is that what you're saying?
It totally could. And one other thing that I just wanted to point out is the New York grand jury is different from the federal grand jury in a couple of important. One way is that you can't present hearsay evidence, which means like the evidence you have to present is basically the same quality evidence you'd have to present at trial. That makes it harder. Also, witnesses get immunity, so you really have to kind of build your case before you go in and be pretty sure. So that's another reason that I think that the office itself is fairly convinced that it has a case. But again, right, we don't know. It could be against the organization. It could be against some other individuals within the organization, and we really don't know. And we won't know because of that grand jury secrecy.
The witnesses have to get immunity before the grand jury. What does that tell us about Alan Weisselberg, the CFO, who has, we are told, all the knowledge of all the workings of the Trump organization? If he testifies before the grand jury, then...
Right. I mean, well, unless he's waived. I mean, of course, you could have a witness waive that transactional immunity, but transactional immunity is pretty big. It means you just can't prosecute that person for anything, the subject that he's testified about. So... if we see him testify, I mean, we're not going to see because it's secret. But if that comes out in some way, I think that's a hint.
We know that he, in theory,